Simon Ekpa is currently detained in Kilamakoski Correctional Center, Finland, and Burkina Faso's President Ibrahim Traoré sent official envoys to discuss his possible release. The Finnish court has given Simon Ekpa 5 bail conditions, with the key sticking point being that he must call off the Monday sit-at-home protest in southeastern Nigeria. Simon Ekpa refused to call off the protest, saying it's voluntary and beyond his control as he did not directly order it. However, Nigerian officials disagreed, presenting Finnish media evidence suggesting Simon Ekpa is indeed the key instigator of the protest. The Nigerian officials also claimed Simon Ekpa has more influence than IPOB leader Nnamdi Kanu, citing his larger online following as proof he could call off the protest if he wished. However, Simon Ekpa insisted that Nnamdi Kanu is still the leader and he cannot override him. He stated that he cannot do anything without Nnamdi Kanu's consent, as Nnamdi Kanu remains imprisoned in Nigeria. The Deputy Prime Minister of the United States of Biafra, Dr. Ngozi Orabueze, criticized any negotiations with foreign officials, demanding unconditional release for both Simon Ekpa and Nnamdi Kanu. Burkina Faso's President Ibrahim Traoré is scheduled to personally visit Finland on May 2, 2025 to meet with Simon Ekpa and possibly reach a resolution. Coinciding with that visit, the FBI is set to release a report on Nigerian President Tinubu's past, involving alleged narcotics-linked forfeitures in the US. These two events, the Traoré visit and the FBI report, are expected to have major political implications for Nigeria and potentially the broader region. Simon Ekpa is a controversial political figure of Nigerian descent based in Finland. He's been associated with the indigenous people of Biafra, IPOB, a separatist movement calling for an independent nation in southeastern Nigeria, often referred to as the United States of Biafra by supporters. He is also an outspoken advocate on social media, where he commands a large following, particularly among pro-Biafra sympathizers. Simon Ekpa is currently being held in the Kilamakoski Correctional Center in Finland. His detention stems from a complex mixture of legal, political, and diplomatic issues, including allegations that he incited unrest in Nigeria through calls for civil disobedience. Specifically, he has been linked to a recurring protest known as the Monday Sit-at-Home, a weekly shutdown of businesses and activities in southeastern Nigeria meant to show solidarity with Nnamdi Kanu, the imprisoned leader of IPOB. Now enter Ibrahim Traoré, the president of Burkina Faso. A relatively young and charismatic African leader, Traoré has been gaining international attention for his bold political moves. In an unexpected twist, President Ibrahim Traoré took a personal interest in Simon Ekpa's case. He went as far as sending official envoys to Finland to meet with both the Finnish government and Simon Ekpa himself. This isn't just a show of solidarity, it's a diplomatic move that appears to have broader political motivations, possibly aimed at positioning Burkina Faso as a central voice in Pan-African matters. The Finnish legal authorities have laid out 5 bail conditions for Simon Ekpa. These are standard legal procedures when handling sensitive international detainees, especially when public unrest is involved. Simon Ekpa agreed to 3 of those conditions. The remaining 2 are critical, but it's the 4th one that has sparked the most tension. The Finnish court insists that Simon Ekpa must publicly call off the Monday sit-at-home protests in Nigeria. This condition, however, has proven extremely problematic. Simon Ekpa, during his meetings with President Ibrahim Traoré's envoys, said he cannot fulfill that requirement. He argues that he never directly ordered the protest in the first place, and insists it is a voluntary civil action undertaken by the people of southeastern Nigeria. In other words, Simon Ekpa is saying, even if I tell people to stop, they probably won't, because this movement is bigger than me. This statement, however, is not being taken at face value by either Nigerian or Finnish authorities. Nigerian officials assert that Simon Ekpa is indeed the de facto orchestrator of the protests. They've provided Finnish authorities with evidence, including media reports from Finnish newspapers, pointing to Simon Ekpa as the individual most directly linked to instigating the Monday shutdowns. These reports say that millions of people in southeastern Nigeria stay home every Monday, and that fear, not necessarily consent, often drives this action. Further complicating things, Nigerian authorities argue that Simon Ekpa actually holds more sway over the pro-Biafran movement than even Nnamdi Kanu, who remains imprisoned in Nigeria. To back up this claim, they cited Simon Ekpa's larger social media presence. One piece of data presented during the meeting indicated that Simon Ekpa has over 186,000 followers on various platforms, compared to Nnamdi Kanu's limited online presence. This discrepancy exists largely because Kanu's social media accounts were disabled following his arrest. However, Simon Ekpa pushed back firmly. He insisted that Nnamdi Kanu remains the undisputed leader of the movement, and that any decision to call off the sit-at-home protests must come from Kanu himself. He also argued that it would be disrespectful and politically dangerous for him to override or undermine his superior. Simon Ekpa portrayed himself not as a commander, but as a messenger, someone who operates within the boundaries of a structured movement led by Nnamdi Kanu. This standoff left President Ibrahim Traoré's envoys frustrated. Their mission, after all, was to facilitate Simon Ekpa's release by helping him meet the bail requirements. When it became clear that Ekpa wouldn't or couldn't call off the protests, the negotiations reached an impasse. Still, Ibrahim Traoré did not give up. He decided to take matters into his own hands. President Ibrahim Traoré is now scheduled to visit Finland on May 2, 2025. His intention is to meet Simon Ekpa face to face. This is highly unusual. Rarely do heads of state get personally involved in such legal matters. But Traoré has increasingly presented himself as a revolutionary leader who stands up for African causes on the world stage. His visit could be seen as a gesture of solidarity with Simon Ekpa, or perhaps even as a calculated political move to increase Burkina Faso's diplomatic visibility and moral leadership in Africa. The timing of this visit is especially significant. On the same day, May 2, 2025, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, in the United States is expected to release a long-awaited report related to President Bola Ahmed Tinubu of Nigeria. This report allegedly contains details about a past narcotics-linked forfeiture case that involved Tinubu years before he became president. Though Tinubu has consistently denied any wrongdoing, the release of these documents is expected to stir major political waves across Nigeria. If that sounds like a coincidence, it may not be. Many believe that the simultaneous timing of President Traoré's visit to Finland and the FBI's release of the Tinubu report could become a turning point in West African politics. For Simon Ekpa and his supporters, it might boost international attention on the grievances of the southeastern Nigerian population. For Tinubu's critics, the FBI report could weaken his presidency and undermine the Nigerian government's credibility, both at home and abroad. Meanwhile, tensions within the United States of Biafra movement are also heating up. Dr. Ngozi Orabueze, the deputy prime minister of the movement, has openly criticized any negotiations between Simon Ekpa and foreign officials. She issued a strong statement demanding unconditional release for both Simon Ekpa and Nnamdi Kanu. Dr. Ngozi Orabueze believes that these men are being unjustly detained for championing the cause of their people, and that any engagement with foreign governments only serves to legitimize what she sees as an illegitimate political persecution. Dr. Ngozi Orabueze also took to social media to highlight broader issues. She accused the Nigerian government of reintegrating known terrorists into the army and police, while simultaneously persecuting Biafran activists. Her statement painted a grim picture of life in southeastern Nigeria, where citizens are caught between the violence of extremist groups and the heavy-handed response of the state. Amid all this, Nnamdi Kanu himself made an appearance in court in Abuja, Nigeria's capital, on April 29, 2025. The hearing, while not decisive, drew significant attention and was seen as part of a larger legal and political theatre playing out in full view of both domestic and international audiences. Supporters of Nnamdi Kanu saw his court appearance as another opportunity to highlight what they see as the ongoing injustice of his detention. Now, looking at all of this together, what we're seeing is not just a legal case about bail conditions in a Finnish prison. This is about global politics, the legitimacy of grassroots movements, the power of social media, and the growing voice of African leaders on the world stage. President Ibrahim Traoré's involvement signals a shift. It shows that African nations may no longer passively watch as their political activists face legal battles abroad. Instead, they might start intervening, diplomatically, if not politically, to shape those outcomes. Meanwhile, the FBI report on President Bola Ahmed Tinubu could deal a serious blow to his administration if it reopens old questions about his past. As for Simon Ekpa, his future is now tied to multiple fronts. Legally, he remains behind bars in Finland with one bail condition, calling off the Monday sit-at-home protest, hanging over his head like a sword. Politically, he is wedged between loyalty to Nnamdi Kanu and pressure from both African and European authorities. And ideologically, he continues to be a polarizing figure, seen by some as a hero, by others as a source of instability. The story is far from over. What happens on May 2, 2025 may alter the direction of many political careers and movements. Will Ibrahim Traoré convince Simon Ekpa to compromise? Will the FBI's report spark fresh legal or political consequences for Nigeria's leadership? And most of all, will the people in southeastern Nigeria see any real change, relief, justice or peace from these international dramas? Time will tell. But for now, all eyes are on Finland. And for the people invested in these movements, both at home and abroad, the stakes could not be higher. Simon Ekpa is not your typical political actor. Born in Nigeria but now living in Finland, he has become a controversial figure tied to the ongoing push for Biafran independence. That movement, officially led by Nnamdi Kanu, has long demanded a separate nation in southeastern Nigeria called the United States of Biafra. It's a cause rooted in decades of political and ethnic tensions, and while Nnamdi Kanu remains in Nigerian custody, Simon Ekpa has become a loud and influential voice for the movement, particularly through social media. Today, Simon Ekpa is behind bars in Finland, held at the Kilamakoski Correctional Center. His detention didn't come out of nowhere. Finnish authorities allege that Ekpa has been involved in inciting unrest back in Nigeria, particularly in connection with the Monday sit-at-home protests, a weekly shutdown of economic and social activity in the southeastern part of the country. These protests were initially meant to show solidarity with Nnamdi Kanu, but over time they have become both disruptive and deeply controversial. Many schools, businesses, and public services shut down on Mondays out of fear of violence or retribution, and Nigerian authorities have blamed Simon Ekpa for keeping the protest alive. The heart of the matter is this: the Finnish court has offered Simon Ekpa a pathway to bail with 5 conditions. He accepted 3 of them, but one key condition has become a major sticking point. The court wants Simon Ekpa to publicly call off the Monday sit-at-home protest. It sees this as a good faith measure, something that could potentially de-escalate tensions in Nigeria. But Simon Ekpa has refused to comply. His reason? He insists he never ordered the protests in the first place. According to him, these actions are a grassroots expression of frustration and support for Nnamdi Kanu. He claims that the protest has taken on a life of its own, and that even if he tells people to stop, they won't. To Simon Ekpa, this is not about control, it's about a people's movement. The Finnish court, and certainly the Nigerian government, are not satisfied with that explanation. Nigerian officials have been adamant that Simon Ekpa is more than just a voice in the wilderness. They've presented evidence to Finnish authorities, including reports from Finnish newspapers, that tie him directly to the organization and promotion of these protests. They argue that his massive online following, reportedly larger than that of Nnamdi Kanu, makes him not only influential but responsible. They also point out that fear, not voluntary participation, often drives compliance with the Monday shutdowns. The argument goes like this: if Simon Ekpa tells people to protest, they will. If he tells them to stop, they might. Either way, the idea that he has no control is, in their view, misleading. In fact, Nigerian officials have gone so far as to say that Simon Ekpa now holds more sway over the Biafran movement than Nnamdi Kanu himself. That's a bold claim, and one that has sparked internal divisions within the pro-Biafra community. Simon Ekpa flatly rejects that claim. He maintains that Nnamdi Kanu is still the undisputed leader of the movement, and that he, Ekpa, acts under his direction. Even though Kanu is imprisoned, Simon Ekpa says it would be improper and politically dangerous for him to override Kanu's authority. To Ekpa, the chain of command matters. He sees himself as a spokesperson, not a commander. And so, even if he wanted to call off the protests, he says he doesn't have the authority to do so. Ibrahim Traoré is not just any African leader. He's young, dynamic, and increasingly seen as a bold voice on the continent. Since coming to power, he's presented himself as a leader willing to challenge traditional power structures, both within Africa and beyond. His decision to get personally involved in Simon Ekpa's case caught many by surprise. He not only sent official envoys to Finland to speak with Finnish authorities and Simon Ekpa, but he's now scheduled to fly to Finland himself on May 2nd, 2025, to meet with Ekpa directly. That kind of personal involvement from a head of state is rare, especially in a legal matter happening in another sovereign country. But for President Ibrahim Traoré, this appears to be more than just a diplomatic gesture. It's about positioning Burkina Faso as a new leader in Pan-African politics, taking a stand in matters that resonate across the continent. When Traoré's envoys met with Simon Ekpa, they hoped to convince him to accept the bail conditions, especially the demand to call off the Monday protests. The logic was simple: if Ekpa agreed, he could be released, and the diplomatic headache might be resolved. But Ekpa didn't budge. He stood firm on his principles and reiterated that the protest was not his to cancel. This put the envoys in a difficult position. They were there to help, but they couldn't make progress without Ekpa's cooperation. Still, President Ibrahim Traoré wasn't ready to give up. Instead, he decided to go to Finland himself, signaling just how seriously he takes the matter. His upcoming visit is being watched closely, not just in Africa, but also in Europe. It reflects a growing confidence among some African leaders to take bold, independent actions on the world stage, even when it involves complex international legal issues. Now, here's where the plot thickens even more. On the same day that President Ibrahim Traoré is set to arrive in Finland, May 2nd, 2025, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, in the United States is scheduled to release a potentially explosive report about Nigerian President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. The report allegedly contains information about a past narcotics-linked forfeiture case involving Tinubu before he rose to political prominence. Though Tinubu has denied any wrongdoing, the release of this report is expected to send shockwaves through Nigeria's political establishment. The fact that these two events are happening on the same day has not gone unnoticed. Many analysts believe the timing could amplify their impact. For one, the international spotlight will already be on Nigerian politics because of the FBI report. That increased attention could also highlight Simon Ekpa's case and the broader grievances of the southeastern Nigerian population. For critics of President Tinubu, the release of the FBI report could weaken his legitimacy and open the door to further scrutiny, both domestically and internationally. For Simon Ekpa and his supporters, the overlap could be a turning point. It might create an opportunity to draw more global attention to their cause and increase pressure on both the Nigerian and Finnish governments. For President Ibrahim Traoré, it's a chance to step onto the world stage and present himself as a leader willing to take risks for African solidarity. Meanwhile, within the pro-Biafra movement, tensions are running high. Dr. Ngozi Orabueze, who holds the title of Deputy Prime Minister in the self-declared United States of Biafra government, has come out strongly against any negotiations involving Simon Ekpa and foreign powers. She issued a statement demanding unconditional release for both Simon Ekpa and Nnamdi Kanu. According to her, any dialogue with foreign governments undermines the movement's core principles. She argues that both men are political prisoners who should not have to make concessions for their freedom. Dr. Ngozi Orabueze's position reflects a growing divide within the Biafran movement. On one side are those who believe in engaging with international partners and trying to work within existing systems. On the other side are hardliners who see any compromise as betrayal. These internal conflicts are not new, but the stakes are now higher than ever. At the center of it all is Simon Ekpa, a man who, whether he likes it or not, has become a symbol of a much larger struggle. His case is no longer just about bail conditions or legal procedures in Finland. It has become a flashpoint in the broader conversation about African sovereignty, political dissent, and the future of separatist movements in the digital age. As May 2nd approaches, all eyes will be on Finland, not just to see what becomes of Simon Ekpa, but to understand how his case fits into the wider geopolitical puzzle. Will President Ibrahim Traoré's personal diplomacy make a difference? Will the FBI report destabilize Nigerian politics? And perhaps most importantly, what happens next in a movement that refuses to be silenced? Whatever unfolds, one thing is clear. This is not just a story about one man in a Finnish prison. It's a story about power, identity, loyalty, and the growing intersections between African politics and the global stage. Simon Ekpa may be in detention, but the movement he represents and the storm swirling around him is far from contained. Icon on the top right corner of your screen to watch my next video. You will enjoy it. I will see you again in my next update. Enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye for now.